What's up, Planeswalkers? It's your boy K-Dog. Got another historic list. This one we're taking a look at a Jund Superfriends list. So obviously I just came out with my Abzan one not too long ago, and that felt pretty reasonably competitive, and I decided to try to do that in Jund because that's kind of an overlooked color combination at the moment. I mean, you still see things like Jund Dinosaurs, or there's a couple other Jund lists that have been floating around recently, but nothing involving like Planeswalkers. So I was like, let's try that as well. And so after some playtesting, this is kind of what I've come up with, and it feels pretty reasonable. It definitely holds its own, at least at some of the kind of lower levels. I'm in gold right now, so it definitely does well there. Probably not something you would want to necessarily take all the way up to Mythic, but I'm not the most competitive player. If you want to tweak it to go higher, I'm sure there's maybe some little things you could do, but I think it's pretty reasonable with where it's at. But again, it's just meant for more fun and fair play, because that's kind of what we do around this channel. So in this particular list, we're running 26 lands again, just like with the other one. You do need lands to hit your 5 and 6 mana planeswalkers, and maybe cast multiple removal spells, things like that. So in this one, Jund, just in case anybody's not familiar, is black, green, and red. Alright, so starting off here, we have 2 copies of Agonizing Remorse in the main deck. Just kind of never a dead card. It's always pretty reasonable. And the situations where it's useful, it's very, very useful. And being able to exile something from your opponent's graveyard, if nothing else, makes it so it's basically never a dead card, because there's pretty much every deck has like Jumpstart or Escape or some kind of graveyard, a little bit of synergy there, and just be able to get something out of their hand as well. So there's definitely it's never a dead card. It's always something useful out of it. So 2 copies of Cast Down here is our choice removal spell, being able to destroy a target non-legendary creature instant speed. So a little bit of a toss-up still, I think, between this and Heartless Act. I think Cast Down is still slightly better, but you can definitely look at Heartless Act if you're finding that's if you're running up against things like more legendary type creatures, which Cast Down of course cannot hit. 2 copies here of Cindervines here in the main as a way to kind of deal with your opponent casting non-creature spells, because it's going to deal 1 damage to that player, or you can sacrifice it to deal destroy an artifact or enchantment and deal 2 damage to that permanent's controller. So it's kind of nice, a main deck artifact and enchantment hate, but also hating on your opponent for casting non-creature spells, which applies to pretty much every deck. 3 copies here of Murderous Rider for the instant speed creature and planeswalker removal. And then being able to put down a 2/3 lifelinking body is pretty sweet to either attack in after we've kind of cleared the board, or to protect our planeswalkers, or just give another creature out to go along with our creature tokens from our planeswalkers to kind of help kind of a go wide strategy a little bit after we've kind of gotten to the mid to late game stage of the game. So just fantastic all around. 2 copies here of Tibalt. Obviously, life gain strategies are still pretty prevalent in Historic, and Tibalt shuts those decks down as your opponents can't gain life. And you can -2 to make a 1/1 Red Devil creature token. When it dies, you deal 1 damage to any target. So just kind of a nice little jump blocker here to keep your planeswalkers alive or buy time for some more removal. 2 copies here of Maelstrom Pulse. It's a 3 mana sorcery speed, destroy target non-land permanent, and all other permanents with the same name as that permanent. So definitely a ton of upside on this card against certain matchups. However, it's not nearly as relevant as you think it might be. So I don't think you need to run like 4 copies of this. But if you are finding you're running against a lot of decks that are running multiple 4 of permanents, then you can definitely tweak this to 3 or even 4 copies. I haven't really found that to be the case, so it's kind of like Legion's End in that regard. But definitely there are situations where it's going to be kind of a blowout, and just be able to hit any non-land permanent is just makes it definitely so it's a reasonable card. Instead of Shadow the Sky here, of course, we have Extinction Event since we're not in white. This is being able to exile creatures, gives it a little more upside. However, we have to choose odd or even, and then we'll get to exile creatures of that type. So a little bit of a mixed bag. So certain decks it can still do just fine. Other decks like Gruul, they have tons of 1, 2, 3, and 4 drops. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag there against Gruul, but it's still at least reasonable to kind of clear out half their board. And then we'll also have 2 copies here of Deathsprout, instant speed, destroy target creature, and we're going to search for a basic land to put on the battlefield tapped. Shuffle our library. So, we are running 26 lands, so we definitely need to get up to those 5 and 6 lands for our Planeswalkers, and Deathsprout is a way to kind of help us do that while killing something at the same time. So 4 mana is a little bit steep to destroy a creature, but it's instant speed, and we do get a basic land out of it to fix our colors, or to get to that 5th or 6th land so we can make sure we cast our Planeswalkers on curve. Speaking of Planeswalkers, we have 2 copies here of Vraska. She's just a fantastic all-around card, 4 mana for loyalty. She's never really a dead card, but certain matchups she's obviously not as good. However, being able to +2 to potentially sack a permanent, draw a card, gain a life is pretty sweet. If you do flood out, you can sack one of your creature tokens and gain life, draw cards. Or you can just -3 to destroy any non-land permanent with mana cost 3 or less. That's kind of where she really shines. And of course, if she sticks around, the -9 is pretty much game ending. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. So her -9 is pretty sweet. And since she +2, she can actually get there pretty quickly. Like if your opponent's just focusing on your bigger Planeswalkers and they ignore your Vraska, that +2 can just keep ticking up until you get to that -9. And then all you need is just one creature to get through, and boom, that's it. And Eldest Reborn here is a nice way to kind of get rid of creatures on your opponent's side, being able to force your opponent to sack a creature or a Planeswalker. So once you've kind of cleared out the board, maybe Extinction Event missed one creature, or they're pretty light on creatures in general, and just have a Planeswalker down. Boom, Eldest Reborn comes down, gets around hexproof, gets around any sort of protection type spells. Obviously, Tameo is the one thing you got to worry about, but it's pretty unusual. But generally speaking, Eldest Reborn is at least never a dead card. Obviously, in some more aggressive matchups, we can sideboard this out. But yeah, Eldest Reborn is still a nice card. Second Saga, each opponent discards a card, so that could potentially be a creature or a Planeswalker. Third Saga, put any creature or Planeswalker card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So it doesn't have to be your graveyard, it can be your opponent's graveyard, which makes Eldest Reborn just a fantastic card. 2 copies here of Sarkhan the Masterless. Of course, is an all-star in a Planeswalker deck. 5 mana, 5 loyalty. Make a -3 to make a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying, or +1 to turn all of your Planeswalkers into 4/4 red dragon creatures with flying, of course, is fantastic. Since we are pretty light on creatures, Sarkhan's going to kind of help you close out the game very, very quickly. Just get 1 or 2 little Planeswalkers down. Obviously, you do have to play around instant speed removal on your opponent's side, but we have things like Agonizing Remorse to kind of help out with that a little bit. Let's have Vivien here. She's just a nice creature factory here, being able to +1 to make 3/3 beast tokens every turn. That's literally why she's there. The -2 doesn't really do anything. Her static ability doesn't really do anything. She's just there to pump out 3/3s turn after turn. So I think that's worth running. 1 copy here of Angrath. Same thing, both these cards are nice kind of situationally, but they aren't necessarily like super amazing for what we're trying to do here. 5 mana, 4 loyalty, Planeswalker, +1 to each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life. That's actually pretty decent in a lot of situations. And the -3 to gain control of a creature until end of turn. Untap it, gains haste, so it's kind of like an active treason, basically. And then if it has mana cost 3 or less, you sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So it's kind of removal for any 1, 2, or 3 drops on your opponent's side. But, being able to target any creature, doesn't matter what the mana cost is, you can target any creature, just that it only gets sacrificed. It has 3 or less. So it's kind of removal, or you can just hit your opponent with a big creature. So either way, you're going to get some pretty sweet value. And the fact that you can target any creature, just like those Active Treason and Claim of Firstborn type cards as well. So you can give it, you can do this to your own creature. So if you make a token, then you can Angrath -3 and potentially swing in for those last bits of damage. Haste. So that's pretty something to keep in mind as well. And finally, here we're at our 6th drop. We got 2 copies here of Liliana. She's just a house here, 6 mana, 6 loyalty. Anytime a creature you control dies, draw a card. +1 to make 2/2 zombie tokens, so she can kind of help you build up a zombie army and close out the game. After you've controlled the board, you can -4 to make each player sacrifice 2 creatures. If you have any creature tokens out, like you don't care because you've got a bunch of Planeswalkers that are going to keep pumping out tokens turn after turn. So you're going to draw some cards and get rid of creatures on your opponent's side. So she's nothing but upside, and the -9 is pretty much just game ending as your opponent just loses all their lands, loses all their permanents, and they wish they did not play Magic anymore. 2 copies here of Chandra. It's just a fantastic all-around card. Obviously works great against any sort of other control decks because she can't be countered. However, the +2, gives your opponent an emblem, the way they take 1 damage on their upkeep. Every turn, they have no way to interact with that. -3 is kind of a mini board wipe, dealing 3 damage to each non-elemental creature. So again, we don't care if our creatures die because we're just pumping out creature tokens turn after turn with our planeswalkers. Being able to get rid of creatures on our opponent's side is fantastic. Obviously, elementals is, can be a deck at times, so that's a little bit of downside. But even then, you can still just minus X to deal X damage to a creature or planeswalker, and if that creature or planeswalker would die, it goes to exile instead. So it's just pretty much never a dead card. 2 copies here of Garruk. It's a 6 mana, 5 loyalty planeswalker. However, Garruk pumps out 2/2 wolf tokens, and when those wolves die, you get to put a loyalty counter on Garruk. And of course, being able to -3 to destroy a target creature to draw a card is fantastic. And then once you get to the -6, you get an emblem with creatures you control, get +3/+3, and have trample. So all of your little 2/2, 3/3 creature tokens now become 5/5, 6/6s with trample, and that's gonna help you win the game quickly, especially with like Sarkhan. Like that's just man, it's beautiful. And the last card here is Erebos' Intervention, X and black, instant speed. Target creature gains -X/-X until end of turn, you gain X life, and exile up to twice X target cards from a graveyard. So just kind of a nice versatile card to either be removal for creatures on the board or our opponent's graveyard. So going to the mana base here with 26 lands, 1 Castle Locthwain, of course, for the card draw, then 2 Swamp, 2 Mountain, 2 Forests, and then try to keep the shock land, to a minimum. So 2 Blood Crypts, 3 Dragonskull Summits, just a couple temples here in the 1 Temple of Malice, 1 Temple of Maudi, 2 Overgrown Tomb, 3 Woodland Cemetery, 3 Rootbound Crag, 2 Stomping Ground, and 2 copies of Field of Ruin. You definitely need some kind of a land interaction in most decks. For historic, whether it's Field of the Dead, or Search for Azcanta, Adonto, the First Fort, I believe is what it's called. Things like that. There's plenty of non-basic lands that you do need to answer. So 2 copies here of Field of Ruin, and also kind of gives us some fixing in certain situations as well. So it's always useful unless you're running against those rare decks that are just all basic mono lands for some reason, but you don't come across those very often. So some additional cards against kind of the mid-range and control matchups. 2 copies of Duress, 2 more copies of Agonizing Remorse, and 2 copies here of a Davriel, forcing your opponent to discard a card and then punishing them to if they don't have enough cards in hand is pretty sweet. We also have the Sorcerer Spyglass, which can work as planeswalkers or anything with an activated ability, like obviously Witch's Oven is super annoying, so things like that. 2 copies here of Assassin's Trophy, just because it's a nice versatile removal spell. Even hits land, so you can take out like Field of the Dead and things like that. Planeswalkers, etc. So just having the versatility, cheap interaction here, it's pretty fantastic. 2 copies here of Golden Demise. Since we are running a bunch of creatures, Golden Demise give us a little bit of upside, where once we have the cities busting, its creatures on an opponent's side get -2/-2. So our creatures are not affected. So it's kind of a little bit of a blowout. We can kind of kill a bunch of small creatures on our opponent's side, maybe zombie tokens from Field of the Dead or whatever, and then just swing in with all of our creature tokens and hopefully win the game. And some kind of sacrifice, creature, and enchantment interaction here, and 2 copies of Farika's Libation, forcing your opponent to sack a creature, or an enchantment, 3 mana instant speed. It's a pretty solid spell as well. Kind of deals with especially things like Thassa, Heliod, any kind of hexproof creature. Just gives us a little more game against certain matchups like that. And then finally here we have 2 copies of Ashiok. Since we're running a bunch of planeswalkers, you do need graveyard hate, so Ashiok is a fantastic answer for that. Also being able to shut down your opponent from searching their library can be relevant in certain matchups as well. Alright, that's the deck. Let's go ahead and jump into some best of 3, see how we do. Alright, against ASDX St. John 21. Gonna go first. Hand's a little slow, but we do have 3 lands in all of our colors, so I think we just keep it and hope we don't get run over here by aggro. The upside, if it is a super aggressive deck, then we can just concede without even showing them what we're doing, and we can just sideboard appropriately. Temple is good, and kind of find some removal here. Not Vivien. Eat to Extinction, cast down, pretty much any removal would be nice. So obviously Angrath is not going to come down on 5 if they've got multiple creatures out. I guess if we're desperate, it can. Okay, we're just up against Garruk, which is still one of the best decks in Standard. Burning Tree, which with no backup is pretty sweet for us. We'll just hold up the Murderous Rider instant speed here and hope we keep curving out with lands or removal. I think we'll just kill the Pellet Collector because that can grow, otherwise the Burning Tree has already done its thing. So we're taking 2 anyway from the attack, so might as well just kill it and take 2 from our own Murderous Rider. Woodland Cemetery. Yeah, we're gonna drop that. Murderous Rider, so they could have some kind of a removal here. Wow, they don't crack their Fabled Passage. So we could just see a Questing Beast or something like that come down. And they attack that. We take 4, go down to 10. Yep. Yeah, we can't block. We can attack. So here, I think we kind of have to attack with our Murderous Rider just to gain some life. I mean, they attack 4, we go down to 6 next turn. There's not really anything to get back at this point. Angrath can steal. Still the Burning Tree Emissary, and they lose it, but they sack it anyway to... we'll just wait one more turn in case they maybe have like a Gallia or a Gruul Spellbreaker or something like that. There's still plenty of things they could haste in here, so... Robber of the Rich. No, just a Domri's Ambush. Swing 5. If they don't add to the board, then we'll just drop... well, Garruk. But then Garruk dies to any sort of a hasty threat. They have a Llanowar on turn 5 or whatever. Okay, they discard a land. So, them having a creature means we cannot Eldest Reborn. So we're kind of forced into Garruk to go to that Questing Beast. There's still plenty of outs here. Karn in a Gruul deck. Is that just for the... I guess that's just for the cat oven sacrifice shenanigans, which is still one of the better decks in Historic now with some of the bans. But it feels a little memey here in your main deck though. But I don't know. Stone Coil for 2 or 3, I guess. Nope. They attack with Llanowar. So we get their Questing Beast back, which feels pretty good. Let's Angrath, force him to discard.
Never no fire, no steel.
So now they are in top deck mode, but we obviously they do have some pretty nasty top decks in Gruul. I'm not going to say no to Chandra. At 5 life, and the opponent concedes. Yeah, nice just showing there. Don't care about Tibalt in this matchup. Just need any little bit of removal we can, especially early interaction. So definitely want to bring in Assassin's Trophy. So we saw Burning Tree, we saw Pelt Collector, we saw Llanowar. So maybe Golden Demise. Eldest Reborn put in work there, but I wouldn't expect it to necessarily be the answer. I think you have to leave in Cindervines to blow up an Embercleave. Agonizing Remorse is okay. You can kind of get things out of their hand, especially if they're running like things like Karn. Then maybe we still want the Agonizing Remorse as a 2 of. Just pretty much any instant-speed interaction is going to be what we're looking at. So we could Agonizing Remorse for Pharika's Libation, which is interesting. Still think Vraska good. It hits a lot of the stuff in their deck, and then it can give them a little bit of a distraction to swing at Vraska instead of us. So yeah, I think we just run it back like this. If we find we're still a little light on removal, we can just bring the libations in for Agonizing Remorse here in game 3, but we'll try like this. Okay, so turn to Agonizing Remorse. So we're missing second black source, but we do have the Field Rune to kind of help us clear that up. We could also Temple to kind of maybe scry into something as well. Turn 1 Llanowar is pretty nasty. Chandra is not what we want to see. Extinction Event is good, but we are missing a second black. But I think the field rune can help us get there, so we'll just trust that we can do this before our opponent goes off. And a slow start for them. So Forest means our Rootbound Crag can come in untapped next turn, or we'll just Field of Ruin, maybe try to blow up a castle next turn. We're not running counter spells. They can Spellbreaker next turn. We don't really have answers for Cleave yet, so I think we just Cleave. Get rid of Ember Cleave. They can crack this Fabled Passage, tap their Llanowar for their third land, and play probably a Spellbreaker and swing 3, which we're down to 15. It's not too terrifying. Might play another one next turn, swing 6. Do need to find a way to deal with that. I guess we Field of Ruin and hope they give us a target. Don't really want an Assassin's Trophy here because we're going to get their third land. I mean, we can't trophy the Spellbreaker because now it has a Hexproof on their turn. Okay, they got a Llanowar. Also, have to draw land anyway, and Domri kind of ramps them next turn. So let's just do it. So they gotta search for a land, so they can now swing in 3 plus the Llanowar Elves next turn. But those are 1 and 3 drops, so we can definitely exile those. That's pretty sweet. We did find another black source. That's perfect. Yeah, I don't think we want to be taking that much damage, so we'll go odd. Bye-bye Llanowar, bye-bye Spellbreaker. They still get the 1 in hand to hit us for 3 down in 9. That's not terrible. We'll probably have to Murderous Rider to take 2 more, which isn't great. But now we have Planeswalkers in sight, so I think we're okay. So kill that, take 2 instead of 3 next turn. Hope they don't have a Questing Beast. Either way, we have Planeswalker next turn, so I think we're okay, unless they just draw perfectly right here. Okay, Stomp and make a 4/3. Alrighty, so if we Liliana and make a token, they could have some kind of a Domri's Ambush or another's. Probably didn't leave those in, I would imagine. I think Chandra, I'd rather keep our Liliana alive, so if they do top deck... they do top deck and Questing Beast, I'd rather keep our Chandra alive. I mean, our Liliana alive and lose Chandra. So definitely going to give them a token. I mean, Murderous Rider only has 2 power, so it can't block a Questing Beast either. But we got Vivien next turn, and that'll make a 3 power creature, which will block a Questing Beast. But yeah, our opponent apparently didn't have very good draws there. Sweet. Alright, up against Orphan. People still playing Gyruda. Well, that hand seems reasonable. So Cindervines probably not doing too much here, but we do have the Intervention, we have the Pulse, Deathsprout. So decent removal options. Okay, Gyruda in hand. Unfortunately, we don't really have good answers for Gyruda at the moment. Obviously, we do have the E2 Extinctions, which can target all of their all of their even costed creatures. Keeping these Paradise Druids alive at all costs. Well, we don't have any targets yet. We basically need to draw Eat to Extinction here. Helm of the Host, that's cute. I don't have anything. Paradise Druid. Alright, bye bye Gerudo. Let's see, we have lots of green and red already. Forest, mountain in hand, so yeah, swamp. Yeah, Maelstrom Pulse. It's one way to get around hexproof. Caryatid, sure. Helm, we can blow that up if we want. Let's just, doesn't seem great, but we'll just keep them off creatures. Period. And we can still, we can blow that up at any time. So just have 2 cards in hand, so let's go ahead and get rid of one of them.
No fire, no steel.
Spark Double. That's pretty cool. So, Helm costs 5 to equip. 2 Helm of the Hosts. Alright, so they're just all about the memes over there. So Extinction Event is amazing. Cast downs don't really do anything against Gerudo unless you have an instant speed interaction though. So I think we just want the kind of the hand disruption. Tibalt doesn't really feel like it does much here either. Libation gets around the hexproof of Paradise Druids, so that's kind of nice. And do we want Duress or Davriel? I mean, they're trying to empty their hand anyway, so I don't think hand disruption is too crazy, but if we can pick off a Gerudo from their hand or something like that, it could definitely be worthwhile. Cindervines, they had Helm of the Host, but that's pretty memey. Let's go with Assassin Trophy. I mean, we can still kill it with that. And, you know, they're mostly creature based, so I don't think Cindervines really does too much here. Golden Demise, I guess, could make out if we had it. We'd have to have it exactly on curve to kind of pick off their Paradise Druids, kind of slow them down. But otherwise, it just doesn't really do a whole lot. It's good against just really aggressive decks that are kind of all in on cheap creatures. And this is kind of not that kind of matchup. So being able to have that Maelstrom Pulse blowing up their Paradise Druids and them not hitting anything with Gerudo, that was pretty much game right there. So we'll see how game 2 goes. These decks are super hit or miss. So I go Temple, Scry. Man. Well, I'm not going to say no to Garruk. We'll keep. We will keep it Garruk. So we do have the Extinction Event this time, so that is good. Unfortunately, our opponent got to go first, so they have a pretty substantial advantage. Okay, so they have one piece of ramp, and they Caryatid. They missed a land. They're long ways from Gerudo, so let's just take a look at their hand. They could have one in hand, or they could have... Ooh, they have a counter spell. That's cute. Yeah, we'll take that. We will take that. Paradise Druid. So they have 1, 2, 3, 4 mana currently. It might be worth Extinction Event here. I mean, they're kind of a... I apologize for that. A little technical difficulties, so looks like the recording stopped near the end of that game. So basically, I think the last thing we saw was I had cast Extinction Event and killed a couple of their creatures, or exiled. Basically, in the following turn, they played another Caryatid. I played a Garruk, -3 to destroy it, draw a card, drew like a mountain or a land or something like that. And then they basically conceded after that. So that was, you didn't really miss anything, but yeah, I just want to kind of come back and just kind of update since that was pretty sweet. For what it's worth, I did rank up to Platinum, which is the second time I've ever done that. So that's pretty cool. So yeah. I've definitely put a lot of work into this deck to tweak it so it's very versatile and has lots of different answers. So it's just kind of a matter of drawing them at the right time. Some of the early interactions, it definitely can be weak to very hyper-aggressive decks. Got off to a really great start. Obviously, we did win against a Ghoul deck that one time, but obviously we've seen some of the Ghoul decks where they go, Burning Tree into 2-3 creatures. So in those situations, we're going to be definitely having a hard time, but most decks are anyways. But yeah, against hyper-aggressive decks, they get off to a fantastic start. We're not going to really be doing too much because we're leaning heavily on a little bit of spot removal, come out of Extinction Event, and then our Planeswalkers to kind of clean up. But kind of if you don't live long enough to get to them is kind of the issue. So, but we still have some tools in the sideboard, so we still have a chance against pretty much against a range of matchups, I'll say. So yeah, pretty happy with how the deck is overall. Maybe we could use some tweaking here and there. Not really too sure. Like I said, the Golden Demise, I think it's just kind of a personal pick because it's one-sided. If you have the City's Blessing, but City's Blessing counts lands, planeswalkers, creature tokens, so it's not really hard to get in the later stages of the game. And then even if you need against those really aggressive decks to -2/-2 all the creatures, you don't really care because you probably don't have any creatures out anyways. Maybe a Murderous Rider or something that you've dropped, but that's a 2/3, so it's going to survive anyway. But yeah, I feel pretty good with how the deck is at. If there's any changes you would make, let me know. I feel pretty good with where it's at. Like I said, I ranked up the Platinum with it just now. Sorry you guys missed that on the video. But yeah, just want to kind of come back and give you guys a quick recap so you didn't really miss anything. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. And until next time, jank with a purpose.